Hello BookTube. Today I'm going to give you the second part in my review of this collection of short stories, Reality and Other Stories by John Lanchester. And my review today is of the second story in the collection, Coffin Liquor. Coffin Liquor is a story which is told through journal entries from a British economics professor called Watkins, who has gone to Romania to an international conference. The conference is an interdisciplinary conference between economists and academics from the humanities. The town where the conference takes place is never mentioned. And now Watkins is an economist. He is an uber rationalist. He sort of doesn't have a great deal of time for the humanities. He doesn't have any time for anything that he regards as superstitious or supernatural, and he comes across as, frankly, a conceited arse, and it's very entertaining. It's very entertainingly done. He, for example, finds works of art. There's a scene in the story where they visit an art gallery, and he sort of dismisses a painting because it's of a religious topic as not as good as if it had been something about a scientific topic, for example. That sort of shows his sort of attitude towards things. It very much reminded me of when Richard Dawkins sort of complained about people watching the X-Files because it was science fiction, not science fact. So that's the sort of thing he that gives you sort of the idea of what he's like. He's very much similar. It sort of reminded me of that when Dawkins said that. Anyway, from the very beginning, Watkins thinks the conference is a load of nonsense. When he arrives, he works out that he believes he's been misled, and he attends the first lecture, and it's, as far as he's concerned, it's complete nonsense. And so he decides that he's not going to attend anything else at the conference that day, and he's going to go sort of looking around at the sort of places of interest in the town and sort of work out how he can survive the week, particularly until he gets sort of Thursday afternoon when he's got a seminar to give. And so he goes for a walk, and he finds there's a local church which is a place of interest. He sort of remarks about this church that he doesn't find it particularly interesting or historically interesting, because he regards it as a product of a time of, I think he says, superstition and feudal oppression. Sorry. However, this churchyard happens to be the reason why this church is a place of interest is because it is the burial site of a local noble family, and in either the Middle Ages or the early modern period, a sort of the leading member of this family, who was a count, was sort of notorious for being extremely cruel and brutal, and his main pastime was torturing peasants, and sort of killing them, usually by cutting out their tongues, cutting off a few limbs, and then burying them alive. And eventually, the local peasantry got a bit got fed up with this state of affairs, and they rose up against him, cut out his tongue, cut off a few limbs, then threw him in an open grave and buried him alive with lime. And whilst he's in this graveyard, Watkins sort of has got a pamphlet, and he reads about this count, and he finds it mildly interesting. But whilst he's reading this and looking around the church and looking around the graveyard, he comes up with a way of getting through the conference, which is, because the conference is an international one, a lot of the speakers aren't English speaking, so there's some translators who are broadcasting their translation of what the speakers are saying into these sort of mobile devices that you plug your earphones in to listen to. And Watkins decides, if he doesn't plug his earphones into the translator but into his phone, and then he can listen to an audiobook, but nobody else will notice him do this. And so, whilst he's in the graveyard, he decides on what he's going to listen to, and he decides he's going to pick Dickens because that's his favourite author. And he initially thinks about A Christmas Carol, but decides no, it's got something supernatural about it, so he's not that bothered. So he's not interested in it. But then he decides Great Expectations. And so he starts downloading the audiobook on his app. The app is never named, but I'd imagine this is probably, you think Audible, and you get the idea. And as he's doing this, the attendant of the graveyard, who is an old woman, starts running, starts panicking and starts saying "row, row," which I've translated, which means bad in Romanian. But Watkins himself doesn't know what the word means, and he just says not to. He just brushes off the woman, and then leaves and goes back to the conference. So he goes into the conference and starts listening to Great Expectations. But as he does so, he starts noticing that the text isn't as he remembered. And over the course of the week, it becomes clear to him that the audiobook of Great Expectations the text has been tampered with, and he comes to the opinion that this is somebody's uploaded a false version of it on this unnamed app, and so he decides he's not going to listen to it any further. Now the way it's been tampered with is it's a Pip, who in the Great Expectation is the main character. First, at the beginning, the excerpt, which is set right at the beginning with Magwitch in the graveyard, Pip describes as this sort of grey slithering thing, hissing, sort of crawling along the ground, or half crawling, half dragging itself across the ground towards him, and it's sort of hissing the word "listen" to him. And then the next bit of this version of Great Expectation is when Pip is making his way back from Miss Havisham's, and the thing keeps following him as he's going back home, and he reaches home and then he feels it's outside the door, sort of trying to break in. Now at this point in this audiobook, Watkins decides he's going to make a complaint. He deletes it, going to make a complaint, and then downloads Richard Dawkins' The God Delusion, because he decides it's something that's thoroughgoingly atheist and rational. And so he downloads this and then starts listening to it, and it's not the God Delusion, it is this sort of, as Watkins describes it, a corrupted version of the Great Expectations. And so this sort of really sort of irritates him, and this causes him to stand up, sort of storm out of the conference, which sort of making a spectacle of this. People notice him. He then goes back to his room and decides to sort of delete the God Delusion, and he does his seminar on Thursday, and then that sort of spectacle. He makes a spectacle of himself, storming out, and he goes back to his room and decides he's going to leave on Monday morning. He's going to leave Romania Friday, which is the following day, and he says, I'm going to. Next time I write in my journal, it'll be in the safety of my rooms at my college. But then he starts hearing the slithering, half-crawling, half-dragging creature out in his corridor, hissing the word "listen." Now, I won't say any more about the story because I won't spoil the ending. But it's really, I really enjoyed this story, and now in my previous in the first part of this review, the story that I reviewed there, Signal, reminded me of Robert Aikman, and particularly a story he did called Unsettled Dust, and I thought that these stories would be sort of Aikman-esque throughout the whole collection. But this story, Coffin Liquor, really does remind me of M.R. James, with the academic, the sort of rationalist academic main character stumbling on something supernatural that he doesn't necessarily know what it is, and then sort of this sort of growing sense of unease you get with the character. In particular, it reminded me of the sort of supernatural creature reminded me of Count Magnus, and then the main character of Watkins very much seemed very strongly reminiscent, very strongly resembled and was very strongly reminiscent of Professor Parkin. Sorry, Professor Parkin from Oh Whistle and I'll Come to You, My Lad. And so I do wonder, and if John Lanchester is sort of writing stories inspired by particular ghost story writers, and if he is doing that, I really do look forward to reading what the next story is going to be sort of inspired by. Another sort of connection I think that may have just been a slight nod, given the Romanian setting, was the fact that the supernatural creature has the title of Count, and obviously being Romania, Count Dracula, which I don't think that was that may just be me making a sort of connection that was in there over that, or it may be the Count, maybe just be a sort of slight reference to Count Magnus, given that again that story. That also, this Coffin Liquor reminded me of Count Magnus as well, and so I'm going to be interested to read the other stories in this collection because of that. Because the first story being Signal being very much seems to be inspired by Robert Aikman, and this story Coffin Liquor seems to be very heavily influenced by M.R. James. So, but overall, I enjoyed this story, and I look forward to reading the next one tomorrow. I should say that, so obviously my next part of this review will be up tomorrow. However, this is going up now at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on Sunday the 31st of March, 2024, and at 6 o'clock this evening, British UK time, I will be doing a live stream about the sort of first quarter of my reread of the original Ian Fleming James Bond books. So either I will see you tomorrow with the next part of this review, or in about 2 hours' time at the live stream. So goodbye, BookTube.